In this lecture, we're going to discuss children's privacy. Specifically, we're going to talk about the different challenges of children's data collection. We're going to talk about some means of protection, and then we'll conclude with a few examples. Some of the challenges about collecting children's data are that children are really too young to understand the implications of data collection. One response to that challenge has been to require that a legal guardian provide meaningful consent on behalf of their child. Another issue, and we see this a lot with social media today, that children are susceptible to online harassment. A few means of protection that help us combat these challenges are parental controls, age verification, and account verification. There are several controls that parents have that can help them exhibit some type of control over their children's use of technology. These include filters, screen time restrictions, the restriction of certain content, and dashboards to monitor application usage. One example would be the Apple iPhones. If your children also have Apple accounts for a phone or an iPad, for example, if those accounts are under a family account, then the parent is able to monitor their children's screen time, restrict certain content, and is provided with a dashboard that gives them different insights into their children's use of technology. Age verification is another means of protection. One way that applications will verify age is by requiring the user to input a credit card. And finally, a lot of children require adult account verification. For example, if you have a child that likes to play Roblox or Minecraft, in order for them to establish their own account, they're going to need to link their account to a parent account, and the parent will need to log into their email and click on a link that verifies the establishing of a child account. Let's look at a few examples of how children's privacy is protected. One example that we've come across a few times already is CIPP, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. CIPP requires that applications use a privacy policy and notice that explains how data is collected from children. CIPP also requires parental consent for children under 13 years. CIPP does not apply to children aged 13 to 18. That's something that you should keep in mind for the CIPP US. It would only be children 12 and under that require parental consent. And finally, the individual states themselves have quite a bit of leeway when it comes to the collection of children's data. So you'll want to consider the individual states themselves and what restrictions they place on technology or applications that are marketed to children. Another statute you need to be aware of is DOPA, the Delaware Online Privacy and Protection Act. Specifically, this statute prohibits age-inappropriate advertising. No further details are needed for that. Just keep that one point in mind. A further example is the CCPA, or California Consumer Privacy Act. This requires that parents consent to having their children's data collected. The CCPA also prohibits the selling of data belonging to children 16 and younger without explicit consent. An enforcement action that needs to be on your radar for the CIPP US is the case of multiple state attorneys general, the Educational Research Center of America. And what you need to remember for this enforcement action is that the Educational Research Center of America requested that students fill out a survey that appeared to be from a university, but was instead from advertisers. And so multiple state attorneys general launched an enforcement action against this organization. The final example that we're going to look at regarding children's privacy is the GDPR. Again, this is the EU's General Data Protection Regulation. And with regards to children's privacy, the GDPR restricts processing of data for children under 16 unless the parent or guardian consents. In this lecture, we reviewed several challenges concerning children's privacy. Those challenges include the fact that children are too young to understand the implications of data collection, that children are susceptible to harassment and deception, and that only parents or guardians can provide meaningful consent. Regarding means of protection, we discussed parental controls, age verification, and account verification. And we concluded by looking at 5 different examples of children's privacy. We discussed COPPA, DAPA, CCPA, and the GDPR. And we also briefly summarized the enforcement action where multiple state attorneys general launched an enforcement action against the Educational Research Center of America.